So, well, we do have the two boxes. Before we open those, I kinda didn't not buy anime or Disney DVDs again because I decided to get 3 volumes of DuckTales, the 2 volumes of Darkwing Duck, the one of Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers that was there, and the 2 of TaleSpin that were there. And, you know, catching up on my old Disney Saturday morning cartoons that I remembered. And then I got the first season of Under the Dome. I was curious about it. I saw it when I saw Falling Skies. You know, I saw it at the store, but it was the second season. Since I saw the first season on DVD, I decided to go ahead and get that. Naturally, as you might expect, I got Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate for the 3DS, and The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask for the 3DS, and a new Nintendo 3DS. And if you haven't seen one yet, you can see this one's a nice dark red. The cartridges go on the front this time. The stylus is here. It's kind of interesting because it's a lot flatter. It's a lot harder to accidentally pop in and out. You can see here we've got ZL and ZR on the sides. You can see Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate is in there. Obviously, there's also changing buttons. The home button's down here. Power and start are here, I think, again. Although I don't see how I could accidentally press them, and especially since the new C joystick encourages me to go up there. And what else is new to mention? Okay, so the 3D effects. So the camera on the front, facing you, is actually used for a couple of purposes now. I've turned off the one that causes it to automatically adjust the brightness depending on how dark it is. It's a good power save option, but I'm a power hog and I want my screens nice and bright, so I don't worry about that. But the other is it does face tracking, and so I'm not sure. As you can see, I'm moving my head back and forth above the camera. You should be able to see that even though it's mostly held still for the camera, it's definitely adjusting its view. And if you're curious about my Monster Hunter stat, I'm not very far. I've just got the Velociprey armor, because that seems like a really good go through low rank armor. I've got the giant spider's sword, and my cat is dressed like Mario. I would have chosen Luigi, but the Luigi one apparently focuses on smaller monsters first, and I thought, no, I want him taking the heat off of the large monsters, so whatever. If you didn't know about that, Google it or something, or rather, I guess if you just talk to this cat and get your downloads, should be fine. Because it's one of the free gifts. Now, we can go on to these. And as I open these, obviously there's a question. I'm surprised nobody asked. Maybe everybody already guessed, but why didn't I update yesterday? It would have only been a single update. Actually, the contents of this first package here, which includes Game of Thrones 4th season. And since they started doing it Blu-ray only, I also got the DVD version because I like that. And this would have been the only anime I would have updated with yesterday, so I figured there wasn't that big of a rush. Because, you know, the rest of the anime here, the 4 DVDs in here, they got delayed due to bad weather, I'm guessing. So why don't we just begin with the one that I began showing, The Tale of Princess Kaguya. This is released by whoever those are. I'm having trouble reading it in this light. G-Kids? So yeah, as I thought, this was released by those same people who released A Letter to Momo, and I guess Welcome to the Space Show, I think. And this apparently had something to do with Studio Ghibli. They're at least advertising that all over the place on it. Okay, might need to look a little more closely. This says it's DVD. that says it's Blu-ray, obviously. And this, I can't even read in this light. Bonus disc. Isao Takahata and his Tale of the Princess Kaguya. Might be the director. Let's see, looking at the back, I see under audio, English, Japanese. So I guess that means this is dubbed. I'm looking for region information. I'm not spotting any. Well, y'all have the camera recording to double check that stuff on. So if you notice anything, feel free to mention it. Next up is Hozuki's Collheadedness, 13 episodes, 2 discs. Okay, that says complete collection. But does it say... It doesn't say all episodes. So I'm guessing that this isn't everything. Maybe this is the first season, I guess. I don't know anything about this series, what to expect other than I did already look on Amazon because I was a bit curious, but it's Japanese dubbed only. Region A only is something I'm seeing now, which is useful for anybody who likes to import them. And I'm just noticing the not dubbed because first of all, Monster Hunter means that I'm gaming like crazy because I'm falling behind on both Minecraft and Starbound. So these are some interesting character designs now that I look at them closer. So we can see the disc 2 of the Blu-ray is the same as disc 3 of the DVD. And our disc 1s are the same. Well, I guess I'm a bit curious about that. Honestly, of all the stuff that arrived today, I'm most interested in this Princess Kaguya one, because that's a pretty classic Japanese story, if it's the one I'm remembering. So this is Japanese with English subtitles only, Region A only. Obviously, since the new the Patlabor, the new files, has been released on DVD before, I was mostly specifically interested in just the Blu-ray release. I'm pretty sure there was also a DVD re-release of this as well, which may have higher quality video, but whatever. Pretty simple discs. And last but not least, we have Pokemon movie 17, I think. Dancie and the Cocoon of Destruction, maybe? I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm not particularly caught up on Pokemon stuff, and I'm probably not likely to. Pokemon's really nice for the ability to be put on in the background and not worry about it too much. But at the same time, well, I guess the reason why I haven't resumed watching it and just letting that go on in the background while I play all these video games is because I need to get them on my personal streaming server so that I have all the episodes nice and sequential and I can start where I want to. But figuring out how to number everything is actually really hard because even when you get to the later series, there are a couple of skipped episodes. Those ones are just summary episodes, nothing too important. But as you can see here, this anime DVD collection update is a little small, but not bad. So, I guess I can summarize all of the anime I watched this past week as okay. Nothing spectacular, nothing insultingly bad at least. I mean, for me, Bento just made me angry to watch and was hard to watch. Coppelion, I talked about last week how I had started watching it, and I actually thought it was very nice and slow-paced, and I was wondering why it was actually rated so low. And watching it, I kind of understand why. And it's not because of anything particularly insulting, it's just kind of hard to stay connected with it, pretty much. I guess, I mean, there are a number of problems with it. First of all, I think if it had stayed a series where the girls go from place to place and meet interesting people situations, maybe it would have been okay. Maybe scored a bit higher than it did, but when you get down to it, it started seeming like it was doing that, but then it started building up into a really important thing with a very specific group of people and another specific group of people, and so on that level, I guess the issue is it kind of begins as a kind of slow-paced, interesting observation sort of anime, and then transitions into a somewhat more action-y sort of thing. And I imagine that's one part of... I mean, that would be only one part. If it was just that, I would see plenty of people actually enjoying it just fine. It's like, okay, it just has a little slow start, but it gets good. But, you know, you got to acknowledge that it's kind of the first issue that comes up when you think about the series as a whole, because it kind of gives a very... It would attract certain people with the beginning episodes who might not stick around because it transitions to something else other than what they were wanting to spend their time on. But honestly, I think the other things probably contributed a bit more. One of the issues was powers. So it's a bit vague, but I think it's not too spoiler to reveal that they're dealing essentially with a nuclear fallout situation that happened in Tokyo in the context of this anime, and they have genetically modified humans, very small in number, whose goal it is to, who are made for the purposes of exploring, maybe reclaiming or helping, saving people, some stuff along those lines. And there's a real sharp disconnect between that and where it kind of goes with that, the whole concept of them being genetically modified. I can't help but think that maybe it was inspired by Railgun, but could be the other way around, where Railgun was inspired by it, or maybe they were both inspired by the same thing. But I say this because around halfway through the series they introduce a pair of sisters, and that's where things along these lines just start going a bit hard to believe. Where it's like, okay, they've been genetically modified, and they reveal one girl has slightly better senses, but then they're like, okay, now this girl, she's just as strong as the Hulk, and this other girl, she has super electric powers because she has ELT, and it goes even more bizarre beyond that. And when you sit down and think about it, the characters themselves are just fine. It's just that even within the context of their own universe, they kind of feel out of place. And I think things like that are the real big thing. Where that's kind of the issue, is there are things that feel a little out of place, like the anime didn't really need to do that stuff. It should have been about that sort of stuff from the very beginning, I guess. But since that wasn't a big theme in the beginning, in fact, there's an additional thing that I'm not going to talk about that was introduced, I think, in the last couple of episodes, where it's like, they didn't really properly build up to that kind of stuff previously, so the series just lacks theming and consistent theming, kind of, both of those things. But, like I said, none of it made it necessarily unwatchable, just kind of hard to think of it as good. So I think what happened with this is most people think it was, okay, nothing too special. But it wasn't insulting in my opinion. Now, that said, I do think that it was filled with a lot of really neat ideas that would have been neat to explore outside of the context of just how this was put together. And I don't know if that was put together that way because that's what the way the manga was, or if it was just a poor adaptation of the manga, but it's along the right lines. I still think of a lot of the characters as pretty fun ideas, even if all their executions was a little off. So next up I watched Engaged to the Unidentified, which scores quite a bit higher than Coppelion. I mean, Coppelion's a mid-6, well this is a mid-7. But based on the first couple of episodes, I was actually surprised this was a mid-7, because it seemed like low 8 material. And that's why I'm saying this is a week of okays, because this was one where I think the issue most people had with it can be summarized as squandered potential, where there's a lot of fun characters and fun ideas and whatnot, and it felt like the series didn't explore some of those as thoroughly as they could. Instead, it kind of got caught closer to a recurring joke that's usually pretty annoying, and this character, the older sister, is the character in particular, and she has the trait of being the focus of being unhealthily obsessed with the little girl, I guess. And concepts like that tend to be rather uncomfortable to watch, so it's tricky to kind of use them right. And this anime didn't need to use it right per se, because it kind of stayed balanced on a very thin line of, okay, I absolutely hate this, versus, it's not too bad, but I wish they'd explore other stuff. Now, it's not like a comedy such as Ramen Fighter Miki, I think, is a really good example of this idea I'm going to talk about, where Ramen Fighter Miki was really funny in the beginning, but it fell into a rut where it kind of established its own jokes and couldn't break out of them to come up with new ideas. And a part of that could simply be a Dragon Ball Z sort of problem, where, okay, I'm referencing anime to reference anime to explain anime, but, you know, with Dragon Ball Z, you had the power level arms race where eventually the moves themselves became pretty meaningless because there was no downside. It was all just about how much energy the two characters were throwing at each other. And so the bad guys would have more energy, and our good guys would have to train and get to just higher amount of energy enough to beat them, and the next bad guy would be higher. And so, to a degree, Dragon Ball Z started, it fell into a place where it was being outclassed by itself and needing to climb to ever more impossible heights. And, well, I mean, that's an arms race in general, right? And Ramen Fighter Miki kind of ran into that with humor, I thought. And this is a pretty easy thing for comedy animes to run into, where since they're building on the previous expectations you have, they have to one-up themselves every single time in order to make the next one-up even funnier until they run out of ideas on how to one-up things. And there's a similar concept to that when you have the annoying, clingy character who won't take no for an answer. And sometimes it's just what they do that makes them really annoying, and sometimes it's their inability to listen and whatnot. And she definitely walked a fine line, I thought, but she was maybe just okay because she kept the inappropriate. I guess it's not that she kept things in line, but there were people who could keep her in line. And to a certain degree, the anime just kind of fell into a, you know, there's a lot of potential here, a lot of fun things. She was definitely a very fun character, the little girl was. And in fact, I would have almost stopped watching most of the series that she was the main character, but it's really her. Quite surprising. And I thought the ending was pretty okay for what happened. Like, maybe they could have added a few more explanations to kind of make a couple things more obvious, but nothing that was completely unexplainable. Just it ended in a way that was okay, kind of nice. Not to I guess I can't talk too much about it without spoiling it. So again, overall, I thought this was a neat series, and maybe neater than Coppelion, even though Coppelion's characters are pretty neat. You know, I had the one part of that I like. But once again, when you get down to it, it felt like it didn't quite live up to what it could have been. Like, there was a lot of fun joke material that they could have used without actually recycling jokes too much. And they didn't. But oh well. And so, the other thing I watched was the first half of Rating. Technically, I've watched the first episode of the second half, but we only need the one DVD to talk about it. So my interest in particular in watching this one was that nearer the end of my downloading days, this had started airing, and I think now I know, I had actually downloaded and watched 2 episodes. I wasn't sure if it was like 3 or 5 or something, but actually it was only 2. And so I was kind of interested in seeing where it went from there, to revisit that, kind of bring some closure to a not finished anime if I could. And I do intend to try. One of the nice things about this week's releases being a bit less of a priority is specifically that I'm able to make progress on Raiding, and I still have, I don't know, a couple more things. Genshiken's 2nd Generation, and I'm still curious about Leviathan, but I've got to do all the things, right? And so about the series itself, again, it's another okay series. There's nothing about it that's super gripping, but it does have me a bit curious as to why everything is happening. But at the same time, it doesn't seem to grip you episode to episode per se. There's an interesting element of it where our main character is, of course, the one piloting the titular robot, and you know, his classmates don't know, and they don't interact with him too much about that. But it would be, it's a series where you kind of hope it'll develop along those lines, and I'm expecting it probably won't before the end of the series, but I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised in that regard, because I am being a bit cynical and assuming it's not going to be like that, because it's tricky to tell. So in some ways, it's kind of reminiscent of Geiger, the bio-boosted armor, but actually, I guess there's a number of ways it's like that, because it's also, I think they're both based on 70s animes. There's remakes of 70s animes, and I think this is a retelling of the 70s series, which looked like it was maybe a bit more bizarre than this one is, but let's see. When it comes to the mecha combat, you can definitely tell that there's the padding with the preparations to do attacks and whatnot. It's a pretty common mecha version of magical girl sort of stuff, but it's not necessarily bad. It is sort of those things where if you're looking for it, you kind of roll your eyes every time you see it, because you're like, yeah, we really needed to see him transforming into that mode again. And they don't always do that. Sometimes they're quick about it. I think it really depends on how much content is in episode per episode, and it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily episodic, but it kind of feels that way, even if it's almost 2 episodes episodic sort of thing, and there's a developing mystery, but it feels like something's missing. Now, one thing that I could see people having a problem with, if you're thinking about watching this series, is they actually portray this guy as kind of a good at everything sort of guy. And that can be a rather risky move to do sometimes, because it can make the series come off as pretentious, narratively simple-minded, whatnot. But I mention that here because this was one thing I noticed while watching it was surprisingly not so bad in that regard. Actually, I never had any problem with it at all. I just kind of noticed that that's the way they always had it. You know, he's on the first episode, he stereotypically woke up from a dream, and the childhood girl who's sitting in the seat next to him tries to tell him what page on the book they were on, but he went up to the chalkboard and solved the problem. No problem. And they've also established that he's pretty good at sports and whatnot, and I think we can give him some credit, because when they talk about him piloting the robot, he talks about feeling heavy, and you can kind of understand that if somebody suddenly found themselves being 50 feet tall, they'd probably be like, their muscles maybe, I think given the ratio of our body, the muscles actually wouldn't handle it too well, but we would kind of feel that it takes a lot more energy to move the arm up and down like that sort of thing. And I think there's some adjusting that can happen there, but for the most part, that means I'm kind of accepting of the fact that it is that way, but there's other things they've hinted at that could explain some things. There's plenty of mystery to it. things I suspect are the case, but until it actually reveals those, I'm not going to know for certain, and I'm definitely not going to reveal them on camera because sometimes that can spoil things pretty badly, and I don't want to do that. So what else did I watch? I did watch the first 2 episodes of Better Call Saul, and it was good, but it was also disappointing. And what I mean by that was, it's disappointing because the way it's set up, you can kind of tell that they're trying to tell a story, I guess. And that's not necessarily disappointing universally or per se. It just means that I had certain hopes about what the series could be, and it's giving us some of that, but it's also worrying that it maybe means there may be more of an end to it, or not quite the content I was hoping for. Basically, the reason I thought Better Call Saul would definitely work is because Saul Goodman was just a fun character, and you needed to see his reasoning in action, especially with regards to him being a fast-talking, deal-breaking sort of lawyer. And the first 2 episodes definitely gave us that sort of stuff. And it was very entertaining, actually, what it did give us. But what I'm saying I'm kind of worried about is they had a montage of him going through court cases, where we got to see little bits and pieces of Saul being a fun character that we remember him being, and I mean, he was outside of that context as well. But I kind of saw that as each of those individual court cases could have been like its own individual episode, with Saul kind of having sort of hijinks. It would have been a good spin-off-y series where we get to just see Saul Goodman stuff, and maybe we get cameos from Breaking Bad instead of major cameos. But again, it looks like they're going for more of a story. Maybe it's something that could transform into that, or actually would be more versatile. But again, this is a weird preference where I almost thought of a Law and Order Saul Goodman show or something like that. And it's not. It doesn't look like it's going to be that. It looks like it's actually just going to be Breaking Bad Saul Goodman, which is probably also a good thing. It means I'll definitely want to continue watching it, but I don't know. I definitely give it a higher priority than the Agent Carter series, mostly because the Agent Carter short was all men are sexist, or men were sexist, or whatever. And that's not fun. It's not fun because it's a mean thing for the main character. It's not fun because we don't want people to be focused on the bad parts of people forever. It'd be like having a series which was the white man killed the Indian every single minute or something like that. And that wouldn't be fun. We can barely tolerate it when it's Ferngully or something, and actually it's not the white man, it's the Australian. It's not the whatever, it's not the paper company, it's farming that's actually causing the destruction of rainforest. But you know, all of that political correctness stuff is its own thing, and I mentioned this because I think I watched the first episode or 2 of Agent Carter and never really talked about it, but it was disappointing because it was doing more of that same stuff. And it was also mixed with another developing story, but it felt like the other stuff wasn't so necessary. The whole, yeah, men oppressing women, yeah. I don't need a series continuously reminding of it, especially when the short kind of ended at a place where it was a good place. And now maybe this first episode was supposed to take place before that, except that they showed scenes from that in the very beginning of the episode, which makes me think it takes place after the short, which means that it's not particularly enthralling. It feels like feels like they took Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and they mixed something else uncomfortable to watch in there. If you don't want your audiences to say, man, it's not comfortable to watch, you know, you want the... There's a saying that the customer's always right, and that's not necessarily meaning that everything they say is right, but rather, if you as a business want to make sure the customer wants to come to your store, you should be concerned with what keeps them coming, as opposed to doing whatever you want and driving away the vast majority of your customers and killing yourself. And there's a possibility that the Agent Carter series may be killed off because of that, but maybe I'm a bit weird in my own weird corner in that regard. Because I can't help but think that I also watched something else recently where this was a good example where uncomfortable things were actually used very strategically. Like, maybe The Fox and the Hound is a good example where you see two little kids in the form of a fox and a hound interacting, and some of it can be a little cringy because it's like, why did you think you should do that? But at the same time, those set up really important things to happen, and the final confrontation was uncomfortable, but it was building up to that very specifically, and so that's an example of something where, I don't know, I think I'm just blabbering. Let's talk about Monster Hunter 4 instead, since, so, as to how far I am, I think I finished the 3-star village quests. I'm going kind of slow. Maybe some of y'all might consider that fast, but I'd call it slow simply because I think I could probably be going faster overall. If I was probably going online, doing online stuff with people, leveling up, lowering gear with people. But I'm not in a big rush to do that because I'm not sure how many of my peers are doing that. There's a lot more people with Monster Hunter 4 this time because there's the 2 people I introduced Monster Hunter to, and then there's a couple other people I introduced it to, and now there's a couple more people maybe about to get their own copies and start it up. So this means that my peer group is bigger, and the 3DS version can actually connect over the internet, so, or at least I think it can. I'm pretty sure it can, it's just that I've not fired it up myself. So that means that there could be more interactive monster huntering that happens, but I haven't gone that yet. Instead, as you can see, I was wearing the simple Velocidrome armor. Nothing complicated there, because I kind of learned before that if I try and focus on the armor, I'm just going to replace all the low rank versions with the high rank versions if I do that, and then I found out that once I reach G rank, I'm just going to do the same thing. So it makes the most sense to focus on the armors that I think I'm going to use. Then there's a couple that might be nice to have for just these earlier mission different types, like the Locklax set, I think, which would be good for transportation, i.e. carrying items back to storage. But, as for the content of the game itself, I don't know. I've got a bit of a mixed opinion, because a lot of the stuff is actually really good. I'm once again using Longsword and only the Longsword. I figured, since I hadn't decided on anything by the time it came out and I fired it up, I'm like, okay, I feel uncomfortable experimenting with other weapons, so I'm just going to go with what's comfortable and start longswording everything. Yay! Falling back on bad habits. But some of the monsters have been weird to get used to. I'm not sure if it's because they're monsters from older Monster Hunter games than 3 and they're moving similarly to that and not quite updated. It seems more like there's a little catch-up with old Monster Hunting stuff going on as well as a couple of new things, and I can't tell which is which. I've got some guesses, and then there's... I'm a bit worried about how the game begins, because my 2 friends who played Monster Hunter 3 should have no problem with that part, because that's just the Gen Moron fight all over again. Except it's not exactly that. It's a tutorial walkthrough, but if you know what I mean when I say that, then you'll fire up the game and you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm on that ship. Oh yeah, I know to do that when it does that. I know to do that when it does that. It's good that it informs you of that, because that's one problem with Monster Hunter 3, is it never really told you that stuff, and the only way I could figure it out was actually by being shown it by a friend. And then from there, when I had a good idea on how to do it, then I could understand and figure out the real mechanics and streamline it a bit. And this game's actually explaining some of these concepts to you at the very beginning before you have anything. So that may be a little spoiler, but I don't think that's actually too bad of a spoiler, because it's not about the content of everything that happens afterwards. It's just a strange way for it to start, and like I said, my worry is the friends who've not played much Monster Hunter. I've got one who's played a bit, but he didn't get far enough that he would have seen the Jed Moran fight, so it'll be a completely new experience to him. It'll be good to see if maybe he has trouble handling that. Now I think about it, his mom actually gets her copy today, so they may play it tonight, and I might be able to get some feedback, but I won't have it in time for this video, obviously, because I'm recording it now, so whatever. And then I thought the fight I just did was really annoying, but I don't know if I can really say it without really spoiling something that happens in the story, and I don't want to do that. All I can say is it kind of felt like they put you up against a major fight in a really cramped space without giving you a lot of ability to adjust the situation, and a couple of the angles of attack of the monster are pretty ridiculous. And maybe you know what I mean by saying that, because maybe that could be a universal complaint, but as it is, I'm just noting that was really annoying, and that wasn't as fun as it should have been. But I'm past it. I'm doing normal quests again, and maybe I'll have a friend or something to do some online playing with soon, or maybe a couple friends. Maybe we'll actually do a lot of stuff this weekend with a group of 4 people I know. That would be pretty awesome. Otherwise, I do still have to order next month's anime. The big issue is, well, there's a couple of big issues, but it's mostly trying to make sure I time that such that I don't interrupt the stuff that's currently pre-ordered. And what I mean by that is I have the problem where my credit card's about to expire and I'm about to activate the new one, and I want to time that just right so that all these other services that try and charge it won't have a problem. Now I think about it, well, no, that would still be an issue. I've got to figure it out, and it's probably bad time no matter what, because it's the end of the month of February, at least closer to that than to the beginning by a long shot, which basically means Right Stuff packages are probably on the verge of shipping, including, I think Kill la Kill Volume 4 comes out this month. I don't know. I might try it this weekend or something, because I'll have to call into Right Stuff's tech support to get them to change. What if I wait closer to the end of the month? I don't know. I don't need to think about this on camera in front of y'all. In fact, I've blabbed on long enough as it is. So I should let y'all go so that I can start this video capture and go out and eat dinner. So y'all have a nice week.